Patreon member shout out. Stacy, can I come over after school? After school, we can hang around by the pool. Hang by the pool. Did your mom get back? Hey guys, how's it going? It is I, the real Randy Chavez. I'm coming at you today with a Veve Omi update video. Guys, if you're new, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. I love you all. Everyone say hello to Dashi. Hello, Dashi. So this is something that we've talked about over the past couple of weeks. We've actually been talking about Alfred R. Kahn for several months now. Some of you maybe years if you've been here for that long. This is just going to be a reading of his The Incredible Tale of the Greatest Toy Man You've Never Known. Well, obviously some of us know him. This is just going to be, it's nothing really going to happen crazily in the video, but for those of you that are just listening and you don't want to read, just want to listen, this is fine. He brought Pokémon, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Cabbage Patch Kids to our living rooms. He made and lost fortunes. Can Al Kahn stay in the game? Quiz Whiz. You remember that? Asked Al Kahn. We're sitting in his memorabilia-dense office, which occupies an upper floor of an old Art Deco edifice on 9th Avenue in New York City's Theater District. And I do, in fact, remember Quiz Whiz, a handheld electronic trivia game that somehow became a must-have toy sensation in the early 80s. Basically a hunk of rectangular plastic, it had a numerical keypad, a tiny speaker that buzzed, and an attached booklet of trivia questions that you answered by pressing certain keys. The whole apparatus as primitive as a glass-screened cathode ray TV. I think I got one of those for Christmas one year, I say to Kahn. The very rhyming name of the game activating in my mind super 8-ish images of childhood, of chaotic Christmas Day unwrappings. Spend any length of time with Kahn, and this sort of thing happens over and over again to no avail. Sooner or later, you come to realize that this plump, profane, fast-talking 74-year-old from Brooklyn is the person responsible for bringing into existence, for better or for worse, countless toys, games, and gizmos that have embedded themselves, also for better or worse, in the remembrance of things long past. For more than 40 years, Kahn has been one of the world's great toy impresarios, founding and losing empires, making and losing fortunes. You surely do not know his name, but you likely do owe part of your childhood happiness to him. Obviously, we all do. He doesn't, mind you, invent these amusements or really even make them. What he does do is unearth obscure toy ideas, license them from their inventors, and then scale the things up into mass-produced global phenomena, making everyone rich in the process, most notably himself. In this way, he's like an old-school A&R man discovering pop musicians and signing them to the label, or like the early 20th century showbiz producers Lee and J.J. Schubert, who brought scripts and songs and churned out Broadway smashes from their headquarters at the Schubert Theater Building, which, as it happens, stands just down the street from Kahn's office. In the days of Quiz Whiz, Kahn says he traveled the world hunting for new ideas as head of product development for a toy conglomerate called Coleco. He had one of those all-inclusive Pan Am tickets of jet-age lore where you could fly anywhere in the world in first class. Just show up at the airport, flash your ticket, and walk right onto the 747, destination London, Vienna, Hong Kong, Tokyo. Then you ascended the spiral staircase and started drinking scotch and sodas at the bar outside the cockpit. Oh, that sounds so good right now. Kahn made a habit of visiting the world's best toy inventors at least twice a year. High on this list was Eddie Goldfarb, who, in Kahn's word, is a freaking legend. He was a little more colorful with his vocabulary there than I was. But this is the family channel. From his workshop outside Los Angeles, Goldfarb invented countless iconic toys. Those plastic teeth that clatter, that's a Goldfarb. The plastic gun that shoots soap bubbles, that's a Goldfarb as well. The game Kerplunk, yes. Stomper trucks, you guessed it. It was always fun to present items to Al because he got so excited about them, recalls Goldfarb, who turned 100 years old in September and is still inventing toys. Kerplunk, that was on The Price is Right, right? I remember those days. Staying home from school, going to grandma's, watching Bob Barker and Barker's Beauties. Anyway, on a visit to Goldfarm's place in the late 70s, Goldfarb told Kahn he'd recently gotten into electronic games. Then he presented Kahn with a prototype, Quiz Whiz, which was, I thought, Kahn says, just freaking brilliant. I don't know why I did that with an Irish accent. Kahn immediately did a deal to license the game for Coleco. It sold millions of units. It was a huge hit. But that's hardly the end of the story. When Kahn tells toy stories, one tucks into the next, like Russian nesting dolls. Ooh, that's a good one. Goldfarb, you see, once had a partner named Marvin Glass. Glass died in '74, but the toy invention studio that he and Goldfarb had co-founded remained in business for many, many years, based in a fortress-like structure in downtown Chicago. This was no homey rustic Santa's workshop either. It had no windows, had an air of secrecy and high style. Inside, important works of abstract art hung from the white walls. Somewhere, out of sight, were futuristic labs in which engineers and designers brainstorm ideas and build prototypes. It was like a Bell Labs, a Xerox PARC, but for toys. When buyers from big companies, Mattel, Hasbro, Craner, Coleco, came to visit, they were ushered into sleek showrooms where new toys were demonstrated like weapon systems. That's awesome. Anyone who's ever been one of those are heckin' cool. In this swinging Mad Men era, Marvin Glass and Associates had created a glamorous environment to awe buyers and close sales. They were putting on a show, Kahn says today, and it made a distinct impression on him. Toys were entertainment. To sell them, you needed to put on a show, and Glass left no stops unpulled. The firm, for example, had a lunchroom framed for both its kitchen, where a Brigade de Cuisine prepared Michelin-level menus, and its waitstaff. This was the server's side job, actually, a Marvin Glass associate once told Kahn as they launched. Their main job was down the street at a club run by another swinging Chicago showman, Hugh Hefner! Oh, that's amazing! To serve lunch to the toy men, Marvin Glass hired Playboy bunnies. It was theatrical, it was a spectacle, and Kahn took note. I wish I was alive in this time. Mostly, I mean, just the minorities, things weren't so great back in the day. Anyway, I digress. Toyland. Kahn, 22 years old, liked to walk the 400,000 square foot retail floors of the B. Gertz & Co. department store in Jamaica, Queens, where he worked 70-hour weeks for $7,500 a year as a buyer trainee. That's a lot. That's a lot of hours for not that much money. It was 1969. It was his first job out of college, Long Island University. His first job after finishing his compulsory military service in the National Guard. Oh, Sergeant! He'd been hired at Christmas time and spent that holiday with the grunts unloading trucks. Then he began his rotations through the dizzying array of Gertz departments, each like its own independent business. Women's apparel, men's apparel, appliances. Stationed in appliances, he found a shipment of laundry machines that had arrived from a Japanese company he'd never heard of, Toshiba. Clever, miniature, portable, they were designed for use in small spaces, New York City apartments, let's say, and could be hooked up to the kitchen sink. There was only one problem. Instead of a washer in the front of the machines, it said rasher. Kahn bought them all at a steep discount and put them on the Gertz floor, where they promptly sold out at a tidy, profit, misfit product arbitrage. The rotation continued. Electronics, housewares, gourmet foods, books, cameras, sporting goods. Then, one day, up on the fourth floor, he came to the department that Gertz called Toyland. Immediately, Kahn was struck. He gazed all around him at the displays. I had an epiphany, I said. This is where I have to be. Because what hit me was, name one thing in the world that's not in the toy department. Everything in the toy department is a representation of what comes out of the real world. Kids emulate adults. Everything adults are using, kids want to have. So it had cars, planes, washing machines, dryers. I said, this is crazy. This is heckin' great. Again, he's more colorful vocabulary. God just sounds like a G. I want to have a beer with him one day. After the trainee period ended, it came time to choose a department, and Kahn, needless to say, chose toys. Soon enough, he had a second epiphany. He ascended the ranks at Gertz' parent company. He educated himself on play patterns, an industry term of art meant to convey the way children engage with play toys. The toys that children, or anyone, find the most compelling have strong, clear play patterns. Quizwiz, for example, was a personal, portable, trivial pursuit. Stomper trucks could, satisfyingly, drive over anything. The toys that sold best had marketing plans that communicated those play patterns with strength and clarity. At Gertz, toy companies would come to Kahn and make presentations. Sometimes a toy's packaging or its positioning line, the catchphrase that goes along with the product itself, would strike Kahn as off. Sometimes the toy had a weak play pattern. He would suggest improvements, and the toy execs would look at one another, raise their eyebrows, and nod. In the business, Kahn began to acquire a reputation. He had it seemed, the touch. Look at that just beautiful spectacle of a man. Anyway, Al Kahn practiced his own form of Jedi mind control on the U.S. toy market for 5 decades. The secret to his success? Knowing the value of putting on a show. Photograph by KrepoBrooke. Oh, Pokémon! Here we go! One morning, 3 decades later, Kahn was at his desk in Midtown Manhattan when he received a call from the office of the president of the Nintendo Company Limited, Kyoto, Japan. Kahn, by then his early 50s, was CEO of his own toy licensing company. Hiroshi Yamauchi, the Nintendo president, leader of the company, was at the time the richest person in Japan, worth about $8 billion. And again, this is in the 90s. He wanted to see Kahn in person in Kyoto immediately, if not sooner. The tone in the voice of the person calling on behalf of the president communicated to Kahn something between displeasure and infuriation. At the time, Kahn and Nintendo were close business partners in the middle of the most lucrative licensing arrangement not only of Kahn's career or Nintendo's history, but in the history of mercantile licensing. The brand they'd built together was bigger than Star Wars, bigger than anything in the Disney galaxy. They were partners, of course, in Pokémon. Kahn rose to his feet. Japanese custom, he knew, was for a visitor to present his host a gift, a show of humility and respect. If your host was also one of Japan's most powerful men, well, then what? Swiftly, he made his way to an antique shop in New York that specialized in works of Japanese artisanship. He wandered its rooms, pondering the pieces and his sometimes contentious relationship with Nintendo. No entity was more tied to the ups and downs of Kahn's careers than the video game maker. Their history extended back to the early 80s when Kahn still worked at Coleco before a dust-up over Donkey Kong and a series of failed product launches led to what Kahn still views as his unjust and ignominious firing. But Kahn had clawed his way back. For the past 10 years, he'd fulfilled a long-held ambition. He was running his own shop. He called it 4Kids Entertainment. Its core business, Kahn's big idea when he started the company, was producing children's TV shows that would support toys that were basically 22-minute commercials. Kahn said to that end, he'd signed a deal for the worldwide merchandising rights to Nintendo's video game characters, example, Asia. His chutzpah and charisma charmed the Nintendo brass. He was very ambitious and quick-witted and great fun to be around, says Howard Lincoln, the then chairman of Nintendo of America. Kahn was making frequent trips to the home country. On one trip in September of '97, he noticed that wherever he walked in Tokyo, youngsters were gathering in small groups to play an inscrutable card game, the cards bearing the images of fantastical creatures. On the backs of the cards was the game's name, Pocket Monsters. Kahn soon realized that a companion TV show was airing in Japan, done in the country's distinctive anime style, and soon he discovered that Pocket Monsters was the property of a consortium of Japanese entities, including a certain Nintendo. This game, this show, this universe of characters he thought he could see an audience in America, and possibly the world. But why? What about these weird, very Japanese monsters suggested to him their broad appeal? For one, the game had a clear, strong play pattern. As in a martial arts flick, the players advance through levels on a journey to becoming a master. For another, the show was already vastly popular. What caught my eye, Kahn says, was that everybody in Japan was watching it. Kahn is a big believer in the notion of proof of concept and the idea that kids are kids no matter where they're from. If it was big in Japan, Kahn figured it could be big anywhere. When he approached his contacts at Nintendo about taking Pocket Monsters to the Western world, however, they were not enthusiastic. In addition to cards, Pocket Monsters had been made into a game on Nintendo's handheld Game Boy device, but it wasn't your typical arcade-style release. It was a role-playing game, a word game, and they said, kids in America don't read. They will never get this. Kahn says, it will never be something they will understand. Kids in America don't read this. They will never get this, Kahn had reiterated. The guys at Nintendo said it will never be something they'll understand. Nintendo worried that bringing pocket monsters to America would result in a business disaster, and they didn't want to be involved in a disaster. But Kahn persisted. He always persists. I kept hammering at it, he says. He offered a face-saving measure to the Japanese execs. If this thing failed in the US, he said, blame Kahn. Also, he notes, everything ultimately comes down to money. He offered the Pocket Monster Consortium that was, to Kahn at the time, a buttload of money, a poop load of money, a you-know-what of money. For the worldwide rights to Pokemon outside Asia, Kahn paid $2.5 million, lot in the 90s. Back in the Japanese art gallery in Manhattan, Kahn's eyes were finally caught up by a sculpture, cast in bronze, more than a century old. It depicted an action scene. 2 samurai warriors engaged in mortal combat. Yamauchi himself, Kahn knew, was a ruthless businessman, a real samurai warrior, a killer, he says. This thing seemed perfect. Maybe it had been taken during World War II. Kahn could return it to its rightful home. I'll take it, Kahn said. How much? It is a testament to just how spectacularly lucrative Pokemon had become. 4Kids was earning some $60 million in royalties per quarter, $240 million a year, and sending hundreds of millions of dollars back to Japan, that Kahn did not flinch at the answer. $100,000. Can you wrap this up so I can carry it on the plane, he asked. It weighed 40 pounds. Kahn lugged the sculpture onto the flight. He had trouble at Japanese customs. They suspected at first that it was a plundered national treasure, and then onto a bullet train bound for Kyoto. As the train zipped south, Kahn kept wondering, what does Yamauchi want? One day, I got a call from my CFO, he said. We don't have any money. It's all gone. After obtaining the Pocket Monster license, Kahn faced other challenges. For one, he told me, he had not liked the name. Why was it in English? Kahn knew that kids in Japan had been calling the game by a kind of syllabic abbreviation. Why not use that? He thought it sounded like a Japanese word. Just who is responsible for changing the brand's name to Pokémon? A fateful act in its development. To be sure, is, to this day, contentious. Lincoln, president of Nintendo America at the time, told me he doesn't recall. Akira Chiba, head of Pokemon USA for 6 years, says he doesn't know. Whatever the case, by 98, the brand was called Pokemon. Oh, wrong shoulder. Pokemon. Kahn, meanwhile, set about localizing the original Japanese-made shows. He dubbed them into English and scrubbed all the smoking and drinking. Incredible, but true. The topless female characters. Oh my god. He changed the names to American names. Ash Ketchum, for example, was Kahn's team's idea. Kahn says that he came up with the imperishable Pokemon positioning line, gotta catch 'em all. He also hired the composer who wrote the Pokemon music. Oh, beautiful. You can thank Al Kahn in some part for the earthworm of a theme as well. As a Washington Post once put it, Kahn did a deal with the then boutique Seattle game publisher Wizards of the Coast to produce an English-language Pokemon cards. He did a deal with Hasbro for toys. He struggled to persuade American TV networks to air this foreign concoction in which all the human characters had bizarre hair. And if you're looking at this, at the bottom, this is Wizards of the Coast, down at the bottom of that card. Anyway, moving on. Eventually, he succeeded in syndicating the show to hundreds of local stations, most of which put it on at 5 or 6 in the morning. Days passed, weeks. Then word started coming back from the local affiliate after local affiliate. Pokemon's ratings were outpacing anything else on air during the weekday. The bonanza had begun. Now Kahn's train arrived at Kyoto Station. A Nintendo car brought him and his cargo to Nintendo HQ, where he was ushered into the president's suite. Japanese conference rooms are unlike American ones. Typically, there is no long table. Instead, there are low chairs and low tea tables, and Kahn placed the ponderous bronze sculpture prominently on one of these. Finally, alongside an interpreter and a lawyer, Yamauchi entered the room. No hello, no small talk. He sat down in a chair across from Kahn, the hulking bronze samurai battling to the death between them, and yelled at Kahn over the samurai heads in a stream of pitched Japanese. He did not appear to notice the sculpture. It might as well have been a box of Kleenex. Then he got up and left. The interpreter stayed behind. What did Yamauchi said? What did he say? Quote, "You're doing a great job. Keep up the good work." The interpreter said Kahn had traveled 7,000 miles for a lost in translation pep talk. I would be super salty if that happened to me. Hang on. Sorry, I just had an attack. We're good. Later this week, Kahn had meetings with a slew of lower echelon Nintendo executives. He asked them, did the president happen to say anything about a sculpture? Oh yeah, one of them replied. He took it home. Christmas Day, when Kahn was 14 years old, his father was diagnosed with stomach cancer. Murray Kahn was first generation. His father, Al's grandfather, had immigrated to America from Germany in the late 19th century, settling on Manhattan's Lower East Side. In that historic Jewish immigrant enclave of overcrowded tenements, laundry strung across alleyways, and street merchants hollering from behind horse-drawn carts, Murray eventually entered the family business, garments. There was at a point a Kahn clothes company, but by the time Al came along in January of 47, it had gone under, sunk by an incompetent uncle. Murray, fresh out of the army and World War II, worked as a buyer for a men's suit maker called Rose Brothers on Broadway. Among its customers were several of New York's professional sports clubs. Al remembers his father bringing him and his brother into work on the days that the Yankees or the Giants came to be fitted for their bespoke suits. That's awesome. Al himself was a talented football player. Big, strong, fast for his size, he played fullback and defensive line for his high school in Massapequa, suburb on Long Island, so filled with Jews and Italians who, like the Kahns, had moved out from the city that it was known as Matza Pizza. That's so great. Murray was similarly football player size, a big eating, cigar smoking mensch, but when the cancer came, it wasted him away. Within a year of the diagnosis, he was gone. He left behind debts. Al's mother struggled financially. Al went to work to help support the family, eventually paying his way through college at LIU. But before all that, Murray was in and out of hospitals. Al and his mother and his siblings tried to care for him at home. There were horrific nights when the pain grew excruciating. Twice, his father asked Al to find a gun and end it for him. My God. Finally, one night in late December of 62, not long before Christmas, his father had a bad fall. Though the Kahns were observant, Reformed Jews, Christmas time was still a festive family holiday in the Kahn household. But not this year. Or for a long time after. Al heard the noise, ran into the bedroom, and saw Murray's form sprawled on the floor. Al moved to pick him up, and when he did, he was shocked. His father was light as a child. The illness was taking him. They called an ambulance. As the medics loaded him onto the gurney, Al clutched his father's hand and said goodbye. I knew I was never going to see him again, he says. His father died on Christmas Day. This took the most southern downer I have ever read in an article. Like, my God, grab those tissues. I didn't read this beforehand. It's like a blind reaction here. Yu-Gi-Oh! Okay, so really this is like after Bambi's mom gets shot and then the next scene is just birds. Like, you can't just go from that to Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm sorry, okay. Just glad of the absurdity of it. Sorry. Yu-Gi-Oh! Pokémon brought Kahn regularly to Japan in the 90s and 2000s. 6'1", more than 200 pounds, Kahn with his American girth hulked through Tokyo. Whenever his Japanese host took him out to dinner, they instructed the waiters to bring him double orders. That's amazing. Oh, I'm sorry. Where was I? Yes. Once they took him to a Chanko Nabe restaurant, a place that serves a type of stew prepared specifically to fatten sumo wrestlers. Was this hospitality or subtle mockery? The bottom line story is, had some good relationships with these guys, Kahn says, but the Japanese are extraordinarily, protective. It's an island. We were Gaijin, still are Gaijin. Not 100% sure what that means. In 2000, Kahn in Japan thought he'd found the next big thing after Pokémon. It was another card game with a fantastical storyline, a metagame, a game about games. They called it Yu-Gi-Oh! Again, what caught Kahn's eye about it wasn't some profound insight into Japanese culture, but simply Yu-Gi-Oh's already huge popularity in Japan. Just not as cards, but as whole universe of branded stuff. Animated TV shows, films, clothes, toys. Where's the rest of this article? Okay, here it is. I needed Yu-Gi-Oh, says Kahn today. Just why he needed it, however, is at the center of a complicated series of events that even now, Kahn is cagey about narrating in detail. He feels that to do so would risk pissing off the Japanese who run Pokémon, with whom he hopes to do business still. Suffice to say it that by 2005, the Pokémon Consortium had terminated 4Kids' license, which meant Kahn really did need his next big thing. Yu-Gi-Oh was it. Helped along by what Kahn learned in bringing Pokémon to U.S. audiences, Yu-Gi-Oh had by 2011 sold 25.1 billion trading cards. My God. Even Kahn's most astounding success appears to contain within them the seeds of an eventual reversal. Yu-Gi-Oh is no different. A 4Kids business model, low overhead, massive royalties from Pokémon, and then Yu-Gi-Oh generated tremendous sums of cash. At some point, the 4Kids board determined that just letting that cash sit in the bank account wasn't producing enough yield. The search for yield led to auction rate securities. That was in 2006-2007. The auction rate securities were held by Lehman Brothers. You can surely see what's coming next. One day, I got a call from my CFO, Kahn remembers. He said, "We don't have any money. It's all gone." The FBI became involved, and the bankruptcy courts, and many, many lawyers. At about the same time, Kahn was divorcing his wife of 25 years, the mother of his 4 children. Then came the tragedy of his life, suicide of his son. Kahn stepped away from 4Kids, from toys, from pretty much everything. He'd lost his company, his marriage, and his child. I just couldn't deal with it, he says. It was 2011, and Kahn prepared to settle into retirement and ride that till the end came. That was 10 years ago. NFTs. In '98, Kahn had been searching for a partner to distribute Pokémon wares in Australia and New Zealand. Y'all know what's coming. The only region on Earth Kahn had yet to infiltrate with the Pokémon brand. The path had led him to David Yu, a Taiwanese resident of New Zealand with a passion for games and comic books and the collectibles generated by them. He'd already established several stores and was looking to expand across his home country and Australia. Kahn never met Yu in person. They emailed and spoke by phone. To Kahn, though, Yu seemed preternaturally smart and ambitious, so he signed Yu up as Pokemon distributor down under, and says Kahn, he made me a heckin' fortune. Only later did Kahn learn his age. When Yu had done the deal with Kahn, he had just turned 19. Ooh. Fast forward 2 decades to January of 2018. This time, face to face, the pair met up in Hong Kong at the Hong Kong Toy Show, at Yu's request. Now, almost 40 years old, and the head of a sprawling business empire that included retail, real estate, and cryptocurrency ventures, Yu had a proposition for Kahn. I owe you, Yu said. Kahn had helped make him. Kahn had been a mentor, someone he wanted to emulate. The amount of energy he has, it's quite inspiring, Yu says. And he's just so full of great ideas. I don't even know the things that go through his head. Unbeknownst to Yu, in the years since Kahn's retirement, Kahn had grown antsy. He wanted back in the game. Now Yu was asking him, would Kahn be interested in joining him in a new business venture? Again, this was 7 years after he had gone into retirement. Like most of the world at that point, Kahn had never heard of a non-fungible token. A what? Kahn said when you first uttered the term. But Kahn listened. The business would produce digital collectibles based on the blockchain, in this case, Ethereum's, in exchange for equity in Yu's NFT business, which he called Veve. All Kahn had to do was one thing. Get me licenses, Yu said. So it was that Kahn got himself back in the game. For the past 4 years, Kahn has indeed been getting licenses for Yu. James Bond, Star Trek, Universal Pictures, Marvel, Disney, and more, earning his sweet equity in Veve, says Yu. Al opened every single door that we needed in America. End quote. But Veve isn't Kahn's only venture. 8 years ago, Kahn remarried, and with his wife, Gillian Crane, a statuesque actor and screenwriter 20 years his junior, nice, he started a new toy company called Kidtagious. He bought rights to the Chinese animated series that he had renamed, rewritten, and reproduced in preparation for releasing it worldwide. Centering on a group of adolescent swine proficient in martial arts, it's called Kung Fu Pork Choppers. That sounds amazing. I would totally watch that. And he's invested in and become a partner of a tech company, Vitaprint, founded by a pair of toy inventors that he first met 30 years ago. Kahn's workday now extends from 10 a.m. until deep into the night, communicating with partners on the other side of the world. Combined with his charity work, most notably he set up First Responders Children's Foundation after 9/11, Kahn, at 74, may never have been busier. I decided I'm not going to go out this way. This is not the way I'm going to go out, he says of his inability to stay retired after the collapse of 4 kids. Says, quote, I felt that because of some of the things that happened, it made me feel like I was a loser. End quote. Now he notes he's juggling more than 30 projects inside his 4 main verticals. Excuse me. I own equity in all these companies, and I'm pretty convinced I'm going to do okay, so I won't go out a loser. Some moments pass, he starts talking about something else, and then he comes back to it. Nobody thinks I'm a loser, he says. The conversation again goes in another direction, and then boomerang. Bottom line is, I don't want to say I was going out a loser. End quote. What I want to say is, I want to go out on top, he says. I want to be on top again. Okay? That's fair, right? He's certainly doing it. Oh, and look at this photo. Look at this majestic photo. Ah, my eyes. It's sunny. With several multi-billion-dollar franchises to his name, Kahn doesn't lack for confidence. Whenever he has a new product in development, he likes to use focus groups only for what he calls a disaster check. I don't care if they say they love it. I want to know if they hate it. Photograph, again, by Chris Buck. He looks so happy. Cabbage Patch Kids. To unearth new toy ideas, Kahn has always combined newspapers from around the country. Every so often, they yield jewels. That's how he recently found a woman named Lee Cross, an artisan who is selling handmade, soft sculpture plush animals on eBay. Kahn recently signed her to Kidtagious, which will mass produce her creations. That's also how, in '82, while head of development at Coleco, Kahn read about something called Babyland General Hospital in Cleveland, Georgia. An artist named Xavier Roberts had transformed an old medical clinic into a make-believe maternity ward, and from it he was selling handmade soft sculpture dolls. He called them Little People. Soon enough, Kahn was taking a tour of Babyland where the children were born from cabbages. I thought it was the craziest but most wonderful thing I'd seen in a long time, he said. After cutting a deal with Roberts to mass produce the dolls at Coleco, the hard work began. Whenever Kahn has a new product in development, he likes to use focus groups, but only for what he calls a disaster check. I don't care if they say they love it, I want to know if they hate it, he says. The groups he called in to have a look at Robert's doll didn't hate them. They also indicated that the thing they liked most about them was that each was one of a kind. Kahn and Roberts knew that this had to be the hook. But how do you manufacture one-of-a-kind dolls at scale? Coleco's engineers had ideas, basically mixing up the permutations of eye color, hair color, skin color. Quote, I decided that I'm not going out this way. I want to go out on top. I want to be on top again. I know I had it like 6 times, but that's what the article says. Next time in the marketing plan, in this pre-digital era, Kahn's goal was to achieve virality. He wanted word of Cabbage Patch to catch and spread, but he needed the trigger. He needed to put on a show, so he and his admin came up with a stunt. They called up schools in different cities nationwide and asked if their students would like to get some free dolls. Then, in prominent city parks and museums, in Manhattan's Central Park, in Boston and Milwaukee, he had the children convene for a mass adoption of Cabbage Patch Kids. We never called them dolls. Kahn says, before each child could receive the one-of-a-kind creation, they had to swear an oath. I promised to be a good parent, to love, and to yada yada. Kahn remembers, well, that got picked up by a lot of newspapers. They were like, what the shiz? This is crazy. It's like a Sun Myung Moon wedding. When Kahn first presented Cabbage Patch Kids to Toys R Us, one of the then giant retailers' executives, a legendary toy man named C. Ziv, didn't like them. He said, "You mean to tell me you want people to come to our store and run around and just dig through every doll on the shelf and pick one they like?" Kahn says, I go, "Yeah." Then he says, "How will we know which one is selling the best? If the blonde blue-eyed doll is the bestseller, how do we reorder it?" And he said, "You can't." Over Ziv's objections, Toys R Us carried Cabbage Patch Kids, and when they did go viral, when Cabbage Patch mania swept the country to such a degree that the entire first and second and third runs were sold out, and people were fighting one another in the aisles, or flying to England to find them, and Kolesko earned $600 million in 1 year from them, and Kahn appeared on Late Night with David Letterman, and Xavier Roberts became so rich that he began collecting works by Picasso. Even then, C. Ziv didn't change his mind. How is that the hill you want to die on? Okay. Kahn says C took it personally, this whole Cabbage Patch thing. The more successful it got, the nastier he got. One more time he came to the Coleco showroom and toy fair, and it was in a wheelchair because he had hurt his leg or something, and he took his cane and knocked over the Cabbage Patch display. How salty do you have to be? Perhaps in response to all the Cabbage Patch naysayers, his bosses at Coleco were also initially skeptical. Kahn himself took the marketing of Cabbage Patch to a personal level. He had his own Cabbage Patch Kid, for instance, a kind of mini owl, and he brought it with him wherever he went. At restaurants, he put the thing into a high chair and ordered it dinner. Oh my god! On planes, he bought it a ticket and buckled it up in the seat beside him. Like a man engaged in a form of extreme, Toy Biz method acting, he refused to acknowledge that Mini Owl wasn't real. This is bananas. I love him even more now. And then one time, I did something horrible, Kahn confesses. Immersed in his role, unable to resist making a spectacle, he wrapped his baby in a swaddling blanket before a flight one day, so that Mini Owl appeared to be an actual infant. Then he carried it onto the plane and asked one of the flight attendants, "Would you like to hold my baby?" "Yes, of course," she replied, getting ready to coo and cuddle, and as he moved to hand the baby to the unsuspecting woman, ever the showman, he executed the gag. I dropped it. Oh my god. Is that the end of the article? Yeah, that's the end of the article. Oh my god. That's how it ends? Okay, I've been going on for 37 minutes. Yeah, and the next one is about the 6 tips for preparing for winter. That's bananas. Okay, well, guys, this was the story of Alcon. If after reading that, you just aren't absolutely 100% bullish on me, I don't know what to tell you. Everyone please comment, like, and subscribe. Comments are good for the YouTube algorithm. Also, check out Star Helix, Veve Vault, and Kyle Wilson on YouTube, and at Not Star Helix, and at Hey David Don on the Twitter. And everyone say bye-bye to Dashi. Bye-bye, Dashi. I love you guys. I hope you enjoyed. Meow, 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 meow. Wow.